This is Haki FM, Oasis of Justice.
Good morning. You are tuned in to your number one legal station, Haki FM, Oasis of Justice. And my name is Judy Mora. Welcome to the Law and Justice Show. Such a beautiful day, the 16th of March 2022. And I'm not in studio alone today. I'm extremely excited. If you know, this is the talk hour all the way from 10 to 11 a.m. And I have with me people that will be feeding us the necessary legal information that we need to know. And I'd just like them to introduce themselves.
Okay, hello. My name is Daniel Murakaru. Yes, I am currently a student at Kenyatta University School of Law. Yeah.
Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Kakai. I'm also a student at Kenyatta University of Law, second year. Thank you.
Welcome so much at Haki FM, Oasis of Justice. This is the Law and Justice Show where we just discuss the substantive aspects of the law. We just want people to learn the basics of the law. And I know we are approaching the election period. Actually, campaigns zimeshaanza. Most people are aware. But the thing, it's quite unfortunate that campaigns are there, but people mostly don't know who they are voting for. They're just voting because they've been given lessons and all this stuff. So maybe you can tell us more about maybe this voting process and what it entails.
Oh, okay. The voting process. Oh, wow. The voting process, according to the IEBC, has actually started. And the vote... Actually, it's not the voting, the electoral process. It has already started. And we have seen various leaders or various hopefuls, let me call them hopefuls, for the various seats have already started engaging the sovereign, that is the people. And the process of elections basically begins when an electioneering period is almost there. And the process of elections, so we are in that process right now. And how would I say it begins? It begins with the party primaries. Yes. So the party primaries that are coming so that the different parties can be able to nominate the leaders that they're going to be voting for. So let's say if you're in party A, party B, we have different people vying for various seats. So they'll go for the nomination, and then afterwards, then a party will forward the party lists to the IEBC, and then there we start the election process.
Yeah, thank you. I had asked you this because I remember we'll be talking about the electoral credibility and political stability. And you cannot talk about credibility or stability without mentioning the process behind now bringing the stability. So in Kenya, most of the time, during the elections, there are a lot of disputes. Already people are fighting with each other. It's just like football, right? Yeah. The way people have different... they support different games and different things. So it's just the same. So people take politics and religion and football very seriously. So already there's some people that are in conflict. Because mtu anasema I cannot vote for a certain leader. Ole your leader wako. You see, so such kind of things I know is what, even in campus, I'm sure it's what's going
definitely.
on. So maybe you can just tell us a few things to do maybe with all these murmurings that can bring about the instability. Yeah.
Okay. So I think when we are talking about one thing is it's often quoted that we live with each other each and every day. For example, you, Judy, and I, we live with each other, and Kakai, we school together every day. But how comes that after 5 years, that's the time I'm saying, oh, Kakai is not my friend because maybe Kakai likes person B or I like person A. So I really think political stability is something that is very key, and us as the people, we need to remember that at the end of the day, we are still brothers and sisters, we are still neighbors, and it's important for us to remain peaceful at all times, even when the political climate gets heated up. We need to remember that at the end of the electoral period, Kakai will still be my neighbor. If I don't have salt, I'll go and knock at Kakai's door and Kakai will give me the salt. So what's the importance of me, hitting on Kakai just because of Kakai's support to another person? So I'd really advocate for peace.
Yeah, I think something to add on the aspect of political stability is the fact that it's also very much premised on our political leaders and how they carry each other around. You find that, for example, when you go out there in campaigns, you find that when the leader stands to talk, most of the time the leader doesn't stand to tell you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. The leader stands to tell you, oh, this other leader does this other leader does this. So I think what we should also encourage our leaders who are out there doing their campaigns is that when you stand on the platform, the object of you coming to the object of you standing on that platform is to tell me, what are you bringing to the table? It's for you to convince me what you are bringing to the table, so that I can be able to judge on that and see if whatever you're bringing to the table is what I want. I don't want to vote for you because you said that the other person is bad, because definitely if you're my rival, I'll say like you're bad. So I want to vote for you on the basis of what are you bringing to the table? And I also think it now translates to what Daniel is saying, that you find that people hate on each other because I like this person B and I like this person A. But then, it's also on if you look at it that way, you find that people ask you, what makes you so sure that whatever person A is saying about person B is true? Because if you're rivals, definitely you're not going to come in and say, this person did this nice thing. So I think when leaders stand up, they should stand on that platform and tell us, I'm bringing this to the table and that is why you should vote for me. Yeah.
So whose fault is this, to be very honest? Because is it the people or the politicians? Because every other time the politician will come and say bad things about another politician, and us as citizens, we will listen to that. At times you can argue that it's ignorance, but it's quite unfortunate even people that are educated still fall for such lies. So what kind of measures do you believe should be taken? Is it that the IEBC should come up with measures on how campaigns should be done, or what is civic education necessary for the public? Because if you ask me, I actually don't think so. Because if someone that has gone to school, graduated, has a PhD, can sit down and listen to a politician say ABC about a certain politician, a negative aspect about another politician, then maybe you can. I think you've studied this broadly. Yeah, maybe you can tell us.
Yes, I think there is the electoral code of conduct, and even our constitution. Everyone has the freedom of speech. You have the freedom to say anything, but that has been limited to some extent. And talking about it in the context of politicians, we find that their freedom of speech has been limited to the point that they cannot spread hate speech or negative statements. And that's why you find there's the NCIC, that is the National Commission for Cohesion. The Cohesion Commission, which looks at the speeches or the words that these politicians say when they are on those platforms. And that's why you find, like recently there was this Madoadoa statement that was said, and we found the NCIC putting that leader who spoke about that maybe in the list of shame. So those are some of the measures that are there, but I think there's need for more measures that are more stricter, so that if a politician goes ahead and instigates people or incites people against other people, then that politician should face penalties that would deter even other politicians, or would even make a politician who thinks about talking ill of somebody else, give him a second thought.
Okay, so what are some of these measures that you think should be taken? Because I believe as youths, we are represented in the parliament like the minority. Because if we are the voices of the youth, the other youth that cannot access maybe major politicians and all this. So you, in this position, if you are told today you're in charge of a campaign, what measures do you think should be necessary to promote political stability?
So I think the first thing that I would do as a youth is speak to the people, because you find that even though, yes, the politician is at fault, sometimes it's important to give that person. Yes, the person may be educated and all, but then you find that sometimes when it comes to all this political tension that is there, a person may not be able to actually make decisions that are sound, or actually do things that you will you would say that they're being done by a person who has been educated to a certain level. So I think the first thing I would start is civic education, because like Daniel has said, the election process starts with the nomination of leaders. And of course, even when I'm coming to these people, there are some of them who may want to be leaders, and if they come in with this perspective of when I get there, I'm supposed to talk bad about another politician. I think now that's where the problem comes in. So I speak to you before you even become the leader that you want to be, and I speak to you even for those people who don't want to vie for those positions, in terms of you being able to realize that not everything is black and white as it seems, in that I can exercise my vote on the basis of whatever it is that I want, because you find that we are different. We can't be the same, and despite our differences can also bring us together. So I think I'd start with civic education, and then move up the ranks to now the stricter measures that Daniel has suggested, in terms of the fact that we actually stick to our constitution and how the freedom of speech is limited, ensuring that even when leaders stand up to talk and they say things that are actually unwarranted, I would say, they're able to be taken back to the drawing board and be held accountable. I think there's also a measure that I've seen some religious places taking, in that you find that when politicians go to worship areas, you find that some of them now digress. Yeah, they digress from the aspect of coming to talk to the people, and you find them now taking part in hate speech. This is a worship place. So we find that for some areas of worship, the leaders have come up with measures by telling a politician that if you come into this place, when you stand there to talk, there's a restriction on what you can talk about. If you want to talk about a fundraiser, the fundraiser is what we're going to stick to. So I think it's also just the responsibility of religious places or areas of worship and other areas that politicians may come in to speak. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I also think as the people, we also have a part to play towards ensuring that we regulate what politicians are saying. There's this level, I'd say, of impunity or ignorance, whereby you'd find, when a particular leader says, leader B is so bad, and then people are clapping and are celebrating that moment. I think that should reduce, such that it's a friendly match. For example, if Chelsea is playing with Manchester, you won't find Chelsea saying bad things about the people from Manchester. That's the same thing. It's a friendly match. You bring your capability, you bring your agenda, you bring your ideology, rather than insulting another person. And if people celebrate ideologies more, if people celebrate policies and the track record of leaders more, compared to how eloquent they are in insulting other leaders, then I think we will reduce these tensions that usually arise when politicians speak.
Yeah, and I also believe that if there is political instability, like in terms of these campaigns, now talking ill about other politicians is what brings about, I think, at times, electoral instability, credibility. Like, people are doubting, because from even the campaign, this leader had mentioned that leader A chances are high they're going to steal the election. So it's like they're preparing their followers for losing. So if I lose, it will not be a fair game. They would have done A, B, C. So how can this be stopped? Because we've said, yes, these measures are there. There are bodies that are governing the speeches that these leaders are doing. But how effective is this? I think we should see at least even one arrested, so that we know, okay, there's something going on. Because, yes, this body is there, but at the end of the day, this person will still go back to the rallies and talk the way they want to talk.
Okay. So I really think when it comes to now the question of electoral credibility, we now need to bring in the referee. You see, so it's a match, yes, but you have a referee who is now the IEBC. So if, let's say, remember, the politicians still have their right to the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, for example, I have fears maybe the elections would be held credibly, I have that constitutional right as a Kenyan to to speak and say, I think the elections won't be fair. Now, it's the role of the person who is mandated to conduct the elections to come and assure you that they have put up measures that will promote electoral credibility. So if there are any instances where suspicions have been raised, I think it's the responsibility and the mandate of the IEBC to come out, assure Kenyans, assure the politicians, make sure that they are transparent and accountable to the extent that they're supposed to be, so that the people can have confidence in the IEBC rather than in the words of the politicians, such that if the IEBC tells us that this was what people voted, then we will believe in it, because IEBC told us that they did their work in such a way that they earned our trust, and therefore if IEBC earns our trust, then you won't have electoral issues with electoral credibility.
I think just to add on that, we'd also look at the aspect of where you find that political leaders, they come out of elections and say, the elections were not held credibly. So you find that when the courts, now this is where now the courts come in, or rather the judiciary. So I think the judiciary may also play a role in terms of assuring the citizen that even when you say that the election was not held credibly, you can still come back to the drawing board to us, and we can be able to look at the laws, look at the process. Was it credible? And I think a great example would be the 2017 election petition over the presidency. And I think the case, although it caused a lot of controversy in the legal world, I think for the Mwananchi, it represented the aspect that even when there are issues with the credibility of elections, we can still come back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, was it really credible? So I think the judiciary also has a part in assuring the Mwananchi that the elections will be held credibly and fairly.
Okay, I wanted to ask that question related to that, because I believe the presidential petition elections back in 2017, it's like it just told the public that the IEBC is like, it's not credible enough, because there were a lot of electoral malpractices that were found. So in the eye of the public is, okay, if these elections were zilikuwa tu with a lot of issues, so then it means the IEBC can do this over and over again. And that is why the politicians are confident enough to campaign while telling the followers that it can happen that my votes might be stolen or something might just happen. So in this case, like we were talking about civic education. So in your own understanding, how long should be civic education? Because I believe until now, the politicians are campaigning, but the IEBC, they have not done their part in educating the masses. So how long should civic education take place? Like, should it be yearly, or should it be just during the election year?
Okay, so when you talk about how long should civic education be, I think it's something that, IEBC should be doing on a continuous basis, because IEBC is usually there. It's usually funded, so it's there for all time. So if it's for 5 years, it will be there. So IEBC will still be there next year, the following year, the following year, the following year. So I think if, let's say, 2 years or 1 year before election, then the IEBC should start civic education. They should start educating the voters. They should start showing them the methods or the systems that they're going to use so as to ensure that the elections are credible. But we find they still haven't started that. So, they're lagging behind. And if they lag behind, then they create room for suspicion, such that now, if we don't know what is supposed to happen next, you don't know what is to happen next, the voter registrations, things have gone haywire, so we don't know the voter registration, what is it called, the voter register is not yet out for verification. Then if it's done 2 months, it will be done in haste, and there will be some issues that won't be corrected. So I think it's something that they should prepare in advance, such that in their plans they should inculcate 1 year or 2 years span, so that they can be able to enhance their systems. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you also note that most of the time this civic education is actually done when it's close to the elections.
Yeah.
But then the question now is, you give me civic education only when it's the election period, but then the results of the elections, the impact of the election results, we see them all through the 5 years that we have elected these people. So I think the IEBC should actually look at it that way, that the impact of these election results are going to hit the Kenyans for all through the 5 years that they have elected these people. So it is also important that the civic education also goes on for, like at least a year or two, even if it's a year an year before or an year or two before. So I think it should really not be only during the election process or when we are close to the election process that this civic education starts, because it's something that culminates. It's not something. I think the aspect of people reacting towards the political environment, it's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that culminates from small instances, and it just comes in and it becomes this whole issue of that we are facing in terms of also the violence that we see happening sometimes.
Yeah, and talking about the violence most of the time comes from now doubting the credibility of the elections. So for leaders, they can take themselves to court as a dispute resolution mechanism. But how about for now the citizens? The leaders have taken themselves to court so that because they want the elections nullified and all these things. But how about the citizens? We are here fighting amongst ourselves. What mechanisms do you think should be used when now there's this tension and people are fighting over elections?
Okay, thank you. I think when now there's this tension and people are fighting, I think it's up to the leaders now, because the leaders are in court. The respect that people have towards a leader, or the influence that a leader has over its people, then that influence can be used to reduce the tension. Because look at it this way. If, let's say, for example, the leader goes to court to challenge the credibility of elections, then leaves his supporters fighting, then, the leader can go back and tell them, let's wait for the court to make its decision. Then after the court has made it, we won't resort to violence still, but you don't resort to violence. Don't resort to violence. So I really think the politicians should encourage peace at all times and not resorting to violence. Because if the politicians continue speaking and saying, if these people steal, then this is what will happen, they'll know who we are, so if they continue spreading such messages, then people will be aroused in them. It's like you're pumping a tire and you're pumping and pumping and pumping, and then
unachachisha
kabisa, and then it just explodes after the results are released. So I think leaders should advocate for peace at all times, such that if elections go how they'll go, we don't resort to violence like we saw in the 2007 elections.
Yeah, I think also on that, you find that there's the issue of the use of the youth. You find that some of the youth who spread violence, it's not that they actually, they're actually fighting for the credibility of elections. You find that there have been instances where you find youth are actually paid to cause violence. So I think also in light of that, I think it's also something that we should look at in terms of the politicians not using the youth, and the youth themselves being self-aware, or rather conscious of their rights, in that they do not allow themselves to be used by politicians to actually spread the propaganda and violence that occurs during, after, or before elections.
Yeah,
but I think the other reason could be unemployment. You imagine someone is just seated at home and they're being given 7,000 to go out there and cause riot. Do you think they won't just step out and do whatever they have been asked to do?
Yeah, to some extent they will. They will, because you're giving me short money just to go and cause violence. But at the end of the day, you need to sit down and think as a youth, or even as the common mananchi, and think, if let's say I'm given that 7,000, what am I risking? I'm risking my life. I'm risking the life of another person. And life is something that is so sacred, even in our constitution and even in our laws. So I really think, in as much as you're being given that money and you're citing unemployment as a cause, to go for and exercise in violence, I think there's a part for the youth to really understand at what cost. What am I risking? Because you'll get the 7,000. How much will the 7,000 last you? What if you lose your life? What if another person loses their life because of your violence? Will you be able to overcome that conscience? So I think here now we will have to invoke the moral aspect of the youth and ask them, the 7,000 years will be given, but how long will it last you? And what are the consequences of you engaging in that violence? You might die. You might cause the death of another person. You might come out of there with a gross injury. So, yeah.
And I think also when that youth is being given that money, I think something that we take for granted really as a country is peace. When you look at countries that are going through conflict and countries that go through these issues of violence, you find that people don't only lose lives, but then you find that the effects go on even after the violence has occurred. Because as much as you may cite unemployment right now, you find that even that peace is actually really something. It's not something to take for granted, because it's something that actually ruptures the whole aspect of the political situation of the country, the economic situation, the social situation. So you look at it from the point of, even though you say that the end justify the means, or what is it that we call it? The end justifies the means. You need to also look at the ripple effect that you're causing as a person, and ask yourself, what are the consequences of my actions, and are they worth that 7,000, for example, that I am getting?
Yeah, and you know, as she said, the violence causes a lot of ripple effects. You know, it may not only be on your life or on somebody else's life, as she said. It can also be socially, or it can also be economically. Socially, in the aspect of, I saw Kakai participating in the violence. I can't trust her again. See, I can't trust her with my kids. And it affects how we socially relate to each other. And this translates on to, you know, until the next election. It can also cause an effect on the economy. You know, it can cause destruction of businesses. It can cause, you know, and all these things are just as a result of the violence. So now compare the 7,000 and all these other things that we are losing.
And don't you think this thing is easier said than done? Because these youths that we're talking about, unemployed, it's not as if they didn't go to school or something. They're educated and they have reason. So, like, whose work is it to tell them so that they can hear? Because I believe this is quite a hard-headed generation, and I don't know what can be done to us really, but who do you think is responsible for educating the youth? Is it these youth leaders that represent us in parliament? Because where are they even? Like, because if they are there to represent the needs of the youth, then why is it that majority of the youths are still unemployed? And to be very honest, someone that doesn't have money, or someone that is just seated doing nothing, is a very idle person, regardless of the education they have. So what really needs to be done? Is it these youth leaders that need to talk to the youth? How can this youth get the job? Or whose work is it? Is it the government? Is it the parents? Is it the society? So how can our youths, by the time we are approaching the elections, we are confident enough to say that I'm so sure this year the youths are not going to cause violence?
I think it's a I'm looking for the word for it. When I want to put, the responsibility is on everyone. It's a collective responsibility, because you find that if we start with the youth leaders, first of all, for them, I would be more convinced if someone my age is talking to me. You know, like I think for the reason why this generation is so hard-headed, you find, because when an older person comes and talks to you, you have this assumption that they're from a different era, they can't tell me anything. But then I think when someone else your same age, someone faces same challenges or something like that, being able to come and talk to you and tell you something, I think you would be more persuaded to listen to this person. So I think first of all, it's the youth leaders. But I think it's also the responsibility of the government in terms of being able to create varied employment opportunities. You see, as much as we tell the youth that because you don't have a job, you need to be self-employed. There's the issue of, if I tell a youth, go be self-employed, there's the issue of capital. Where's he going to get the capital, the investment and stuff like that. So I think it's also the responsibility of the government in terms of not only creating employment opportunities, but even for that youth who decides that I'm going to be self-employed, the government should create investment opportunities for this youth, granting them loans. We could have an aspect of maybe the government saying that we're going to be granting loans to youth who want to start up self-employment, because I think in this age and era and the amount of unemployment that is facing the country, it reaches a point where sometimes self-employment is the only thing that actually may be able to solve the issue. And I think it's also important in our families, or rather all our other social groups. Like, for example, if I am my classmates, if I'm seated with my classmates and we're talking, we should be able to discuss these matters as maybe classmates or as people who we work together with. So it's also part of our responsibility to be able to talk about these matters out there, and actually, it's some sort of educating each other, in that we are not only talking about being educated, but then educating each other and talking about these matters clearly and just outlining them.
But do you think the government really cares at times? Because they'll do a public service announcement on the live stream medias for anything. Literally, this period of COVID, they did it's like a million of them. But during the elections period, they'll just campaign. You'll rarely see a public service announcement for how the youth can avoid violence during the election period. And if you ask me, I'd say maybe right now the influencers are in a better position to talk to the youth. But unfortunately, the politicians have also noted the power of the influencers on the youth. Yes. So they're now funding these influencers to campaign for them. So currently, as we speak, do you think we are stable enough, or do you think we can, if these influencers are they're still used by the politicians, can they easily cause tension and havoc during these elections?
Yes, to some extent, depending on what they are communicating to the youths. I think the communication aspect is something that is so vital in our elections, such that in as much as this person is an influencer, what is he or she communicating to the youths? Because if we do not regulate, or if we don't look, or if we are not keen at the communications that are being made, then we risk there being tensions. Because if, let's say, I am an influencer, just giving an example, and then person A gives me cash and tells me go and campaign, then I'll be like, this person is our guy, you should vote for person A. If you don't vote for person A, this and this will happen. We'll go and engage in violence. And then we have as an influencer, and then I'm given the money again. Then I go and communicate to these people the importance of peaceful voting. That in as much as this person has been voted in, will still advocate for peaceful measures to ensure that we resolve the disputes that we have. So I think the communication, what are we saying? What are we telling our youths? How are we conducting ourselves to these youths? So that is what will reflect even after the elections, and it will help reduce the tension. So if we look at the communications and, all those guys who are vying there, look at the communication strategy. What are you speaking to the people? What are you telling the people, rather? Yeah. Are you advocating for peace, or are you advocating for violence? Yeah.
And I think also when we ask the question, are we stable? I think that's a question each person should ask themselves. Ask yourself, are you, as a person, with whatever you're sending out to social media, with whatever you're posting, with whatever that you're doing in your daily life, with how you're interacting with people, are you promoting, or are you contributing to that stable environment as an individual? Because I think it all starts with the individual. So when you ask the question, are we stable? Are we going to have a peaceful election? I think ask yourself, in whatever you do, are you promoting that peaceful environment?
And I believe that's quite a beautiful way to approach it. And if you want to join in our discussion today, remember you can text us on 0799 387 613.
This is Haki FM, Oasis of Justice.
I'm Daniel Murakaru.
I'm Michelle Kakai.
And thank you so much for keeping us company. I was looking at our WhatsApp and I saw James Karoki is saying, tuned in from Flamingo Towers. Kindly play for me Melanin by Sauti Sol and Pato Ranking, and I'll be doing that in a few. Then Brian Momba is saying, Kama Kawaida, I'm tuned in from Kahawa. Then Rita from Syokimau is saying, I'm enjoying the show. You guys are lit. Thank you so much. You can join in our discussion on 0799387613. And we are discussing about electoral credibility and political stability. And my friends with me in studio have really told us so much more. And before we went for that musical break, we had just decided to sensitize ourselves. And when we talk about stability, we said it's a collective thing. So rather than asking if everyone else is going to maintain a peaceful elections, ask yourself if you yourself, you are stable enough. The message you're passing across to your peers, is it inciting or is it something that is positive? Yes, so maybe we can just continue from where we stopped.
Yeah. And as I had said, look at the communications you're doing. As Kakai had echoed before, when you're texting, when you're typing, when you're posting that leader that you're supporting, advocate for peace at the end of it all. Yeah.
And I think also when you're posting that leader that you would like to take up the mantle after the other one has left, I think it's also paramount to post him in light of what is he bringing to the table. Mm-hmm. Don't post the leader in terms of, this other leader does this other leader does this. So at the end of the day, I want to be convinced on the basis of what is he bringing to the table, not what is the other one not doing or what is the other one doing.
Yeah, and when it comes to, because we were talking about the instability at times, when people are fighting with each other, an example would be maybe in school or class, or let's just forget about the politicians themselves, assuming they're non-existent. So we are just fighting amongst ourselves, because at times we cannot even afford legal fees to take each other to court or something. So what do you think are the available channels? An example is if my neighbor has come, insulted me on my doorstep because I didn't vote for this leader or I was supporting a different leader. So in this case, what necessary channels should be taken?
I think for that now, we could first of all start with trying to solve the issue as ourselves in something. I think legally, we call it negotiation, alternative dispute resolution methods. So one of them is negotiation, where we sit together as Daniel and Kakai, and we're like, this is my issue, this is your issue. Now let's find a middle ground in which we can be able to solve the issue that we have as together. Then another one is where we now involve a third party. I think that's now mediation, where we come in and we have tried sitting together, or rather we have not tried. We are like, we need a third party. So we include a third person to come in and, just help us out in solving these issues together as the relations that we have. Because I think at the end of the day, before we even had the dispute, we did have a relationship. Yeah. So that means it is possible for us to be able to look at the dispute that we are having amongst ourselves and just decide upon it together, and without the aspect of violence, because at the end of the day we were still neighbors. As Daniel mentioned before, you will still come to my door, sina chumvi leo, sina skari, or something like that. So I think I think I'd speak to those two methods of negotiation and mediation, or rather arbitration, where we either sit down together and decide, or we bring in a third party. Yes, I think.
I'd also advocate for alternative dispute mechanisms. If, let's say, for example, somebody has hurt you or said a negative comment about you because of, choosing to support a particular leader, you can talk it out or solve it out. But to some extent, it becomes too much. To the extent now it stops becoming a small thing, but now it becomes a big thing. So let's say, for example, where you come and constantly assault me, now that shifts. It becomes now a criminal matter that you need to go and report to the police, because Kakai can't come and tell me, I'll kill you if you don't vote for this person. So if she tells me that, then I should take that seriously and report to the relevant authorities, so that if in case that happens, then criminal sanctions can be taken. But if they're these small things, somebody just slightly insults you or slightly dishonors you or disrespects you, it's proper that we use the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. But if it goes to the extent that it's gross and it's now stopping being a petty issue or something, you can now report to the relevant authorities and criminal actions will be taken against them. Yeah,
and I just asked this based on our neighbors, but at times we've seen even violence in the rallies. And the most recent one was where a lady was assaulted by a man in Kisii because she was shouting a different party. I don't want to mention it. Mm-hmm. So, yes, actions were taken quite fast because at least this was recorded. But in the instances where it was not recorded and you don't know this person, but you have easily been, you have even gotten physical injury. So how do you report this? Because you don't even know who hit you, or in this case, is it now the political leader that is going to be blamed, or whose fault is it? Because you're in a rally, then someone assaulted you. So, action inafaa kuchukuliwa against nani?
Oh, now, I think now when it comes to that where you don't know who hit you or something, I think that's a lacuna. We don't know who, the law that hasn't provided who is supposed to take blame, because if, let's say, a rally is supposed to be there, then the security officers need to be notified in advance so that they can ensure that they provide the necessary security that is needed. But let's say, for example, where you are harmed and there is no one, you can't identify the person who harmed you or the person who hit you. Remember, when you come to criminal law, you can't accuse someone without proving. We usually say in criminal law, it's rather 100 people go set free than criminalize or give sanctions to that one innocent person. So the standard of proving, I don't think it can be lowered. It's still beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So I think these are some of the things that we really need to look into, because if, let's say, you're in a political rally and somebody just hits you on the head, so I think that it's, before you go for a rally, please convince yourself that the rally is safe before you go. Because if a stone is thrown and you don't know who threw the stone, that politician won't take the blame, because that politician didn't throw the stone and you willingly came.
Yeah. So but no, I think in that case what we can do is encourage a system of security being there at rallies.
Yeah.
Because people will definitely get rowdy.
Yeah.
So I think we should also encourage a system where we have security at the rallies, so that even Daniel is stating, if in case anything happens, then the person we are going to ask is these security people.
Yeah.
Were you able to protect me? Were you able to keep me safe? Because I'm coming to the rally, because and I'm giving you my life, and or rather my safety. So yeah.
And I also think that it's the role of the various stakeholders in the security sector to ensure and to assure citizens that there will be security during campaigns, during the electoral process. And, they should ensure that it is there, and it is there for all rallies, irrespective of which side someone is leaning on. Security should always be there, such that if there is any violence that is supposed to come up, the security officers are there, rather than it being there's violence and there are no security officers.
Yeah, I can see from one of your works where you said a stable political environment plays in the conduct of everyday affairs in the country, and I must admit to that. So meaning it's a collective responsibility to ensure that we are having a safe political environment, especially in these rallies. So the person standing next to you, I believe, should be on the lookout for you. So when you go to these rallies, try and greet one or two people, because because if someone hits you, then it means someone else has seen it, just that they're covering up. But if you go to the rallies and befriend at least 10, don't just go and stand. So if you go and befriend at least 10 people, then it means 10 people are covering you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's also a really good idea. No, don't go to a rally and you're like, there, I am here, I came here alone, I will leave this world alone. So I think it's also paramount that it's nice to make friends. It's the little things that count, very little things that really count. So use rallies also as a method to make friends, maybe.
and also, as I have said, you can also take your own safety precautions. Like, again, as I've said, before you go, ask yourself, is it safe? If I know it's safe, I'll go gladly. But if it's not, just if you've had, maybe there'll be tensions or something like that, just stay at home. You might see the leader another day. But if you are very sure that it's very peaceful, go there, make friends. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. It's 5 minutes to 11 a.m., so we are about to leave the studio, but we cannot leave just like that. You may just decide, maybe you want to give us a parting shot or your contacts where people can reach you from. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. My parting shot is that keep peace, be peaceful. This is just you'll be surprised at how fast it will end, at how fast 9th August will be here, how the elections will be announced, and then we'll be back to the factory settings, back to Kenya, without the electoral process or without the beef up campaign. So remain peaceful, respect your neighbor, respect each other, communicate peace at all times. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and I think for my parting shot, I would encourage people that let's not hate on each other because of the different what do you call them, choices that we make of leaders. It's just like how I'll decide, what, I love avocado.
Avocados.
I love avocado and you don't. So like, I wouldn't hate on you because you love avocado or you don't. So let's it's just a difference of choice. Let's not hate on each other because of a difference of choice. So let's spread peace, spread love, spread cohesion and integration. And remember, at the end of the day, your neighbor is still going to be your neighbor. So yeah, let's spread peace and be part of the movement to ensure that we are politically stable as a country.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You're such an interesting pair. So definitely our listeners will maybe want to know where they can find you, maybe your social media platforms or something.
Yeah, yes. You currently we are also committee members of the All Kenyan Moot Court competition. Mm-hmm. So you can find us on our social media pages at All Kenyan Moot Court competition. And yeah, just like us, just follow us and you'll find us there. Actually, we are even having a conference and a workshop
and the competitions.
And the competitions, yes. Yes. The moots and the research competitions. Come there and we'll be discussing on
electoral justice and democracy and the various topics that are actually within electoral justice and democracy. And, just the conversation gets, wider. So it will be next week from 21st to 25th March at the Kenyatta University School of Law in Parklands. So feel free to come and join. If you're not able to join, you can also still see us. It will be live streamed on YouTube. So we encourage you to come and participate and, just find more on the conversation, because I think for this conversation we're just this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the ice.
Or rather, what do we call it? But yeah, the tip of the iceberg. Come and see the whole iceberg next week.
Unfold next week.
Yes.
Thank you so much for finding time. Thank you for gracing Haki FM studios. We definitely will invite you here because it's still the period of campaign, and clearly you're much loaded with electoral processes content, so you can just, this will be like a platform for civic education. We can beat IEBC to it before they start. Already people know. So at IEBC kisema tunasema, we had it once at Haki FM.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hosting us too.
Thank you.
This is Haki FM, Oasis of Justice.